we focus on educating Ohio's kids.
One of the tax topics that didn't come up was severance tax. The governor's made it very clear he's going to pursue that. Can you talk a bit at all about what the legislature...
We'll continue to work on the severance tax. My guess is that we will have a severance tax proposal in our tax reform package, either as part of the budget or separately. But the Senate has been working on severance tax with the House. My leads on that are Bob Peterson and Troy Balderson, and they've got some good ideas. There was stuff in the plan that came across from the House that we liked that just needed to be tweaked a little bit.
You're going to have a competing plan to what the governor is going to put in his budget?
I haven't seen the governor's plan. I don't know if we're going to have competing or complementary.
So, Senator, what are going to be your priority bills come the new session?
Well, I'll talk about the priority issues. We haven't yet caucused. We're going to caucus 6th, 7th, and 8th. I think those are the dates. And our caucus will decide what our priority bills are. But I can tell you the topics that we're going to spend energy on next year. Education is going to be a big one. Charter school issues that you brought up. You know, we've had people working on charter school accountability for a while. The big issue for me in education is education deregulation. I don't know that command, control, central planning works very well in anything, and it surely hasn't worked very well in education. We've tried this top-down, do everything that Columbus tells you in education, and it hasn't produced better results. And so my question is, why don't we empower local school districts and local school boards to manage their own districts and then hold them accountable for those results? So education deregulation is going to be a big deal. Higher education. We have issued the 5% Senate challenge. I had my first discussion with one university today when they came in with their proposal. I thought a lot of it was revolutionary and a great idea, but it didn't agree with our 5% reduction in student costs. So we're going to insist on that. We can no longer have higher education that goes up faster than the rate of inflation. The governor touched on it today. If we're going to have higher education that goes up faster than the rate of inflation, fewer people are going to access higher education. That's not good for Ohio. And so we asked the university presidents across the board for a 5% reduction. And we told them that's going to be our expectation when we go forward in this budget. They're working to try and get there. I think they can do it.
Looking back on 2014, I guess the session in general, what bills that didn't make it past the finish line were you disappointed?
Oh, there's a long list. I mean,
maybe pick like two or three.
The big one for me would have been the pay commission. I think, look, this whole issue about how you compensate public officials, to me, is a problem that we need to fix to promote good government in Ohio. I don't think it's a good idea to have politicians setting the pay for other politicians. I know it shocks you, but there was a lot of lobbying by politicians encouraging politicians to give them a pay raise. And in politics, lobbying comes in a number of fashions. I had a statewide official comment that Faber's going to hurt himself if he doesn't give us pay raises. Really? I tend to believe that politicians setting pay raises are fraught with error. While there is a case that can be made for a lot of elected officials and whether the compensation is reasonable, that case is better determined and made by citizens than it is by politicians. So I wish that resolution had gotten done, and we're going to continue to work on it. But there's a whole list of other things. When we got towards the end, it was time to go home. When you start adding things...
You didn't want to stay till 6 a.m.?
Well, we were there to 4:30, but when you started adding things to bills in the last couple of weeks that you didn't have time to vet and understand, it was time to go home. And that's why I believe when we start out fresh, we've got a new speaker. I love the old speaker. Bill Batchelder is one of the finest public servants Ohio has ever had. Cliff Rosenberger will do a good job as well. We look forward to working with them as closely as we work with Speaker Batchelder and working with this governor. Next year's just around the corner. It's going to be a good legislative session.
So, Senator, getting back to charter schools, the governor talked about fixing charter schools, and he said it in a very forceful tone. Do you have any idea what any details about what fixing charter schools?
I don't know the specifics. I just know the ongoing discussion. We've seen some problems. We've got one of the toughest charter school regulatory environments anywhere in the country. If we need to strengthen it, we're certainly for that. I've got my current education chair, Peggy Lehner, who has been working on this issue. We need to make sure we do it in the right way, in a constructive way. But look, that's why I talk about education deregulation. I'm for accountability, but I'm also for freeing up people to manage accordingly. But when you don't do what you're supposed to, when you violate the accountability, I think we need to talk about all education establishments who have failed, need to be talking about other options.
Do you have to move a balanced budget amendment again?
No. Once you pass
carry
that,
it over.
Yeah. Once you pass that, and you send it to Congress, it is good until it's repealed. And so, literally, when you count up the states, and we're doing the states to see where we are for a constitutional convention in Article 5, you can go back to 1864 on some of them that have counted up. Now, I think that those are probably a little stale, and so we tend to look at the ones that are current and the ones that are tied. Remember, ours is only tied to the balanced budget for an Article 5 constitutional convention. There are some that call for a general convention, and others. So it's how you count those is a different question. But no, we don't have to deal with that.
You still need 10 more. That's what the governor said. 10 more states. Is that?
It depends on how you count.
Count.
If you count the general ones, or do you count the ones that are only calling for a constitutional balanced budget amendment? Do you count the ones that? I mean, it depends on how you count them. There is some discussion that we could pass a different resolution with a little bit different parameters. I don't know that that's necessary, but we'll take a look at that. Certainly, we can get where we need to be on the balanced budget amendment, Article 5 Constitutional Convention with what we passed. My hope is that we don't have to get that far, that Congress will wake up and do the right thing and send the states a Congress-passed balanced budget amendment for us to ratify. So I would rather have the talk about 38 states to ratify something Congress passed than us having to go to a constitutional convention. But if they won't do their job, the United States Constitution clearly delineates states have rights, and this is a way for states to exercise their constitutional obligations.
Senator, it's my understanding that the Medicaid expansion, that carriage sort of turns into a pumpkin at the end of the biennium, that we have to do this all over again.
Yeah,
is that not the case?
I'm not sure where we go. Remember, long-standing law, as far back as anybody can research, says that the governor has authority to decide what Medicaid programs the state participates in. The only issue that the controlling board had to deal with is how you move money from one account to another. And remember, what happens is that the state spends on Medicaid, the federal government reimburses us. And so we had a situation with Medicaid expansion where the governor decided to do expansion. He still has that authority, but the reimbursement rates, since it's 100% from the federal government, would sit there in the federal reimbursement account not being able to be allocated. I don't think there's any Ohioans that believe we ought to have a lot of money in a federal reimbursement account and no money in the Medicaid account, so even baseline Medicaid services for pregnant women and children are unfunded. And so the controlling board allowed those accounts to equalize. And so from that perspective, I'm not sure where we go, but we're going to have that debate and discussion.
Through the next session, will you be open to anything that is directly right-to-work legislation or even smells of right-to-work? Is that still off the table for?
We haven't had that discussion. My caucus has not had that discussion. I don't know where we're going to go on those issues, but certainly it's not on our agenda. I told you our short agenda is jobs, opportunity, the economy, and education. We haven't had any discussion on those other issues.
Great.
President's got to go, everybody.
Thanks, guys.